Thank you guys for sticking around. Always great to be back here with friends. And Wyatt, was it Wyatt here?
No, he's not.
No, there he is. After William's lecture, I decided people needed girl summer camp nicknames. And Wyatt's nickname is Rio, the biggest city in Brazil. Mark read from his new and selected. He did the intelligent thing. He read from it. I have a new and selected too. I would like you all to purchase it. It's never too early to start thinking about Christmas. But I'm going to do something stupid. I'm going to read entirely new poems. Dan Groves asked me if I'd read any. I've been writing poems that are kind of monorhymes or versions of monorhymes, and that fell slightly outside of my rule of only reading poems that I hadn't read here before. But I was able to dig up one that has some similarities to that. And this was one I was invited to write for Arbor Day at Ohio State. So I wrote the poem, but luckily I was out of town and didn't have to read it. The poem is called Beyond My Footfall. A footfall on the fallen leaves, my footfall, careful. I am careful not to trouble mushrooms furled in the spongy, crumbling duff, or scuffle the softening mast, muffling my steps. All night small fowl pierced by spring squabble toward triumphal arias. High-blooded harmonies fill a canopy full already with the almost metallic odor of chlorophyll, the blue air of perfumed green. Feel life glow from each leaf shining new. Call it joyful, call it plentiful or playful, prayerful. Call it summer's fuel that in the darkening fall blazes firelessly, xanthophyll like gold and copper foil, coruscant beyond my footfall, metaphor and last belief to the next unfailing regeneration, faithful. Our wars. Curled in curled folders, the last reports were filed by hands infirm now or gone. The men in the reports mostly returned home and mostly died quietly. Others remained for the next war and a few the war after. Months, even years go by without our reading of recovered bones and bits of brass that shone once on the raked, immaculate parade grounds of another age. Our current wars and our current dead are the headlines. Shelves fill with books explaining in cool and novel ways the wars of our youth. But the immense granite memorials saying we will never forget and we will always remember echo only with admiration for their artistry. The living veterans are too frail to visit. Even the widows are vanishing, and the young grieve by granite engraved yesterday. One of the reasons I have some new poems to read is that I was invited to write some poems or send some poems to a journal that was going to do a short poem edition. And the rule for short poems was 10 lines. So I thought, well, maybe I'll give that a try. I've been keeping Bob Hass's translation of haiku by my bed, kind of working through it slowly for going on a year and a half. And then I've been thinking about what American haiku would mean, not the 3 lines. You know, other people have done that. So I just thought, well, 10 lines, that's interesting. And then after a while, you get kind of bored with that idea, and you just say, no, what can you do in 10 lines? That's kind of interesting. And then I went back through my notebook, and I was looking at the poems that I've had, you know, notes that have been sitting there for about 40 years. And I thought, well, what happens if I were to take these 50-line things and just make them 10-liners? And now we'll see. At the DMV. At the DMV, I'd appreciated the ass, compact, beneath pink charmeuse of a woman in front of me, and was staring nowhere, thinking nothing, when she walked past and said without stopping, "White shirt, khaki pants, you haven't changed." 2 days later, as I slid toward another dream of water-damaged and irreparable houses, the shape of her name from 30 years ago, almost Brenda or Linda, almost Mac something, nearly came back to me. I don't know if you guys have the feeling as I do sometimes that it was in the way. The better, or what is the right word here? The more powerful part of your day is ended when you wake up. You know, the dreams, I mean, don't you wake up exhausted sometimes by the courage that those dreams have required of you, or the cowardice that they've exacted from you? And then I thought, well, and I didn't write, and this is one I didn't write about for years because I thought, well, that's kind of stupid. But my wife convinced me otherwise, just like she convinced me to wear this shirt. Not the one I'd planned to wear. Having labored all night and awakened empty, your courage exhausted, your losses epic, and your desires beyond anything waking has ever required. Your self narrows down now to one substance, flesh, and that substance consigned to obligations vital to everyone you love and to history, though how you cannot say, because you're gratefully forgetting, though your teeth still ache from exertion, the sacrifices borne all night, and the valor expended, as you resolve into sunlit, blurred determinations. And I guess this poem is kind of the completion of that poem. It's called The Offices. Whether we have slept through Matins' dream offices or lain awake, we rise to a morning bell we do not call lauds, and not calling it ablution, we, for the day's offices, flush dust and dead skin from our many creases. On the highway and through the parking garage to a computer pinging with the needs and even dreams of those to whom we minister, we carry a grateful heart, or try to, and we labor at gratitude through the long and exhausting offices we do not call terces, sext, and nones. At Vespers, we share with our bodies a meal, not exactly a Eucharist. And before the Compline bell rings, we indulge in drink, sex, or television, and then lie down and pray to be thankful for tomorrow's impossible offices. This one, Orpheus in the Garden, it's a theatrical. It begins with a theatrical recreation of Orpheus in the Garden of the Hesperides. In the Garden of the Hesperides, where the golden apples grew, Orpheus caressed strings that outsang the sirens, charmed hell, and softened the heart of death. The hills crept close to listen, and marvelous trees full of dumbstruck birds bent toward him. The great crowd bent forward, tense. Keepers stabbed torches into the starved bear's wounds, and it stormed the criminal garbed as Orpheus. The Colosseum bawled for justice or mercy, if the singer sang as well as legend claimed. The Romans got inventive in the Colosseum. An after the funeral poem called Two Bourbons Past the Funeral. Not passing the funeral, but after the funeral. Or better yet, not that two bourbons had excreted a funeral. Two bourbons past the funeral. Two bourbons past the funeral. We were reading from the thin old books of the old poet, past old now, and another old poet fumbled to his favorite poem. Where was it? Not this book, but that. And then he was reading, his voice reverent and sure, until he caught on a word like a coat on a barb and hung there, a low moan ululating on a long vowel for the friend he knew almost entirely from these words, and his own voice reading them. On and on the soft moaning rose and fell until he tore free and snarled, "I told you not to do that." "Yes, you did," he said, and turned again to the old poem, reading as if he'd written it. Now, these are poems very much in process, so if you hear something that you think is fixable, you just come right up, tell me. In fact, I read this poem at the School of Letters, and we had a little bit of a conversation about the last line, my wife maintaining staunchly that it made no sense, I maintaining staunchly that it did. And so we had a little poll of the audience, and this broke down on gender lines. The men agreed with me, the women agreed with, well, the women, and so I rewrote it. So we'll see. So obviously the women carried the day. We'll see where we are now. Called Spotlighting. Light stunned, the deer went stupid, but behind the light, I couldn't fire. A self-surprising deference that meant dick to the blue light that whooped on behind us with two gimcrack pistols sliding around the seat as Lenny slapped the lights off, gunned it, slamming into the dark. Pray now, we slewed through curves and powered through dust wallows the law couldn't follow. Stoic, obscured among scraped pines, sassafras, and kudzu, we watched blue lights split the dark and the dark heal 3 times as our spit turned ferric as welder's smoke. Is that one clearer, Aaron? On a scale of 10, how clear is it? 8? 7? Now, all right, I'm going to go to the mass intelligence here. How many think that line's clear? Sons of bitch. I mean, put your All right, it's all right. It's just all right. It's just I'm just going to do the last three. And it's just got these well jerks. All right, stoic, obscured among scraped pine, sassafras, and kudzu, we watched blue lights split the dark. Now that's clear enough, all right? You're with me here, all right? And the dark healed 3 times. Now that means the car has gone back and forth 3 times, okay? And then it says, as our spit turned ferric as welder's smoke. Okay, I mean, that's clear, right? Now, Pete smells welder's smoke. You've had that taste in your mouth, right?
I tried to forget about it.
Yeah, and all right, me and Pete. All I'm saying. This one's just, and that's Pete's way of saying, Pete. This is called Autumn's Author. In his dissolving mansion, Autumn's author is an exhausted autocrat, dying faster than the falling house is falling. Rainfall, raw and raucous, claws the roof as he dodders down broad halls, rattling doorknobs inalterably locked. Once all gloss, paunch, and wanton frivolity, he's now all thought, not somersault or song. And he wonders what those lost enthrallments meant. He knows they weren't false, though behind the one unlocked knob, a chalk-faced pallbearer coughs. And going through the notebook, I found notes. I think I've even clipped this out of the Tuscaloosa News from sometime in the 70s. Well, those of you, how many of you people know what Bryce Hospital means? Yeah, there's some, the Alabamians raise their hand. I can't, how the hell do you know?
Told it at lunch.
Oh God, I told it at lunch. Yeah, Bryce Hospital is the state mental institution, and so you'd say, when you're going through high school, you'd say so-and-so's going to Bryce's. And, but in this, they had a competition for Mr. and Mrs. Bryce Hospital. And they were posed wearing Batman and Robin costumes. And anyway, yeah, that's how I felt, a little mean too, laughing at it repeatedly. The Mr. and Mrs. Bryce Hospital. She was Batman. Robin loomed over her, tight at the hips but torsos twisting away into a gnarled asymmetric Y against the backdrop of black capes. They held a smile at least part grimace as tinfoil crowns slipped sideways down their heads. For 30 years, I've remembered laughing at them when I smiled the same idiot rictus at cops who found me sleeping in my car, at men who gave me work involving shovels, at women who no longer loved me or whom I never loved. God of that laughing moment, have I ever laughed an innocent laugh? Have you? Flies drank at the body of the Lord. Flies drank at the body of the Lord, the necrophagous green bottle revolting in iridescent and golden gorgeousness, thorax and abdomen glowing like iridescent metal, winged emeralds flushed with gold. The wings, too, were radiant with rainbows, the visible spectrum lighting transparent platinum. The day was warm. In 8 hours, the first instars wormed free. Nothing of Christ remains. He's in the flies. There's a terrific piece of sculpture. It's called Death Mask of Sargon. You've seen it if you've seen Stephen Mitchell's translation of the Gilgamesh. It's all over. You can find it easily enough on the internet. And I had found it in the back pages of the Biblical Archaeological Review and kept it taped up over my desk for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And the interesting thing about it is this gorgeous ancient piece of work. And after his death, during the insurrections, somebody tried to claw out one of the eyes. And so you've got this beautiful thing with this kind of savagely speared out eye, and then a few little marks around the other eye. Death Mask of Sargon. Over the sensual, condescending smile of the great king, the abyss of his left eye, gouged out, is the left eye of the abyss, his truest eye. Court sculptures made, broke, melted, cast and recast copper and tin to flatter the king who conquered the western land to its furthest point. In victory so polluted with blood, the chronicles tell us, he offended his own God. At his death, rebels, emerging as artists, speared the true eye into Sargon's death mask. 2 eyes, 2 arts, 1 exquisite artifice, 1 rage, and rage, having gouged the one eye, started on the other until, in the greatness of his artistry, he stopped. You remember, you know, when you're like hiking in the woods or the edge of the woods, you'll always see, or often you'll see, kind of mattresses dumped out there, and it's both creepy and somehow lascivious. Mattress under sumac. Heavy with the day and a failed hunt, I lay down under sumac, and rifle cradled in my arm, I slept on the dumped mattress everyone joked about, saying they themselves had never used it, but older brothers had or younger uncles. And one boy loudly vowed he'd seen Carolyn Aldridge stumble out of red autumn sumac hanging on a stranger, her sandals hooked on his fingers. And I was repulsed and newly hopeful, knowing the many ways, kind and unkind, I'd loved her while alone, and the mattress had served my mastering imagination for years before I woke in the mesmerizing and mildly poisonous musk of autumn sumac. Now, the working title of this poem is Birth of a Naturalist. Partially that's because every time I read the Heaney poem, Death of a Naturalist, I think, I don't know, it sounds fascinating to me. It sounds like the reason I would become a naturalist. So I thought I would think my way into that a little bit. But on the other hand, you know, the title is perhaps too. Birth of a Naturalist. Among moist bromeliads I was bored, and the soft-fingered ferns annoyed me like an ant touching my face and trailing her fingers down my cheek. What was I, a possession? In the gift shop where I desired nothing, a stranger confused boredom for balked desire and bought me a small pot with a blunt nub like a toad's brown snout jutting from dry soil. Thank you, I said, thank you, as I had been taught, and she departed, a plump whirl of black hair and red scarves. In my pocket, the pot rode my thigh like a stone, and because it was a secret, my secret, I began to love it. The next day, the toad's tumescent snout, now mossy green, cracked the packed dirt. On the windowsill above my bed, a rickety stalk rose and kept rising, rising until it fell, and with the toppled orchid in my arms, I slept past dawn when mother's laughter woke me, and I was shamed. Beyond our lawn and property, again in secret, I tucked its roots in spongy humus, where spindly and limp leaves. My problem with that is I keep saying hummus rather than humus. And you don't plant things in hummus. Where spindly and limp leaves, it dwindled. Now, when I stretch out over its absence, the coarse vigor of its killers cushions me, and I imagine the lost orchid animating bracken, buttercup, bramble, and broadleaf dock. Morning glory overclimbs it all, green on green, blaring its beautiful and murderous alabaster trumpets, while twizzling vines unfurl, spin in the sun, and clutching, caress my face. Have you seen that with the morning glories? They put out those little tendrils and they spin until they catch something. And you get the sense, I think, looking at them, don't you, that you can almost sense that movement of them? Well, people have filmed them on YouTube, so you can see them doing it very fast. I was reading Hastings' review of my collected poem, the one that's for sale, and he used the word Southern Gothic, I don't know, 8 or 9 times, and I was going, not Southern Gothic, and at the same time I was writing this poem, which is not going to help me make my case. But it's strange to find your stories about your family turned into a literary genre, without any actual intention on your part. I'll merely say as background to this, I don't know, 20 years or so ago, I was driving back from Florida, where I'd been staying with my girlfriend at the time and my old friend Nancy Loeb and her boyfriend. And my girlfriend and Nancy are both from Montgomery and from Alabama, and Nancy's boyfriend was from Chicago. And we were telling stories, and there was this long pause, and Gary said, "Andrew, how many retarded cousins do you have?" I thought about it for a while and said 3.5. There's one that's kind of, well, anyway. I counted an ant in there, but it's called Johnny. Come on, Johnny, Johnny, come on, we sang it like a song, tugging his limp arms, pulling his belt, pushing two-handed his butt, trying to lead Johnny back to the house, big, dumb ox, and he kept stepping aside with his mouth open and usually his head tilted back, and that afternoon there was something white, milky in the sink, so I cracked an egg and let it slip to the bottom, the yolk sliding in the milk that wasn't milk, like a yellow ship gently scuttled, the egg being, I discovered, an egg Mom had saved to wash her hair with. And Daddy, I thought Daddy'd yell and maybe smack us for leaving Johnny staring at the sky long after the plane had flown on and its vapor feathered into blue. But the big deal, it turned out, was the egg, for which Mama slapped me and Daddy just slipped out while she was yelling. And there was a circle thing going on because Daddy was singing, "Come on, Johnny, Johnny, come on," which, as I was bawling, Mama sang too, till they closed the bedroom door and ordered to feed Johnny. I built him a stack of soda crackers, filched 2 of his sardines, ate half of one, and since he hadn't noticed, gave 1.5 back. I've also been working on a kind of a project involving painters, house painters. And they're kind of potty-mouthed house painters. So if you're easily offended, tough. Or you can leave. Did I read the one last summer called Back Alarm? Good. I'm keeping my record clear here. The Back Alarm. Oh, and this is why I was pestering you about dialogue, Dan, and pestering Margot after her marvelous lecture, too. It turns out that these guys just want to talk. They don't want me to say much in between. Backing up. I'm going to murder Edward Peterson. Who's that? Fucker invented the back alarm. The back what? Shit-ass beeper that makes a racket every time a goddamn truck backs up. Hard not to think about digging his ass up and killing him again when the garbage truck beeps down your street at 4A fucking M. Got bumped by a backhoe once on a job site. Almost killed me even with the beeper. And isn't that my motherfucking point? A goddamn diesel engine's loud enough. You got a kind of garbage mouth today. They should put a back alarm on you so decent folks will know you're coming. Yeah, I know. At home, it's $5 damn in the fucking cuss jar every time I cuss. So I won't be a, bad influence on the kid, a bad role model. You're kind of like the golden goose of cussing, ain't you? Gwen's right, though. I'm working on it. I'm shamed sometimes at how I talk around the kids. But things get weird. We had to make a list. Kiss my ass, cussing. That bites my ass, cussing. But the dog bit me on the ass. I'm not sure that really counts as cussing. What else you gonna say? Bit my behind? Don't matter, though. Ass is on the list. So's effing, which is deliberately not cussing. If you know what it means, and so do I, but you know what it means, and so do I, she says. It's now $5 an effing F. Man's gotta cuss. You don't build a building, you cuss it up, beam by goddamn beam. What if it bit you on the dick? What? The dog. What if the dog bit you on the dick? When I did something stupid, Jesus wept, is what my mama said, and now I say it. I'm quoting scripture. Pay anyway, Gwen says. Jesus wept, and Jesus wept some more. I'm cussing all of us to Disney World. And here's another one by these guys. I had one my wife wouldn't let me read. I didn't bring it, so I wouldn't be tempted. Are led down the primrose path, Stan. You remember that on the Get Fuzzy TV on the comic strip, where at one of the comments was, "Get thee behind me, Stan," because the cat didn't really understand. Never mind. Okay, this one just called Fancy. Not like the, remember the song? Who did the song? Fancy was her name. No, Reva covered Bobby Gentry. Bobby Gentry. Fancy. Remember Bucky, what's his name? McCullough? Guy with a droopy eye, smoked parliaments? Yeah, that's the moron. He was killed last night. He was holding up Pink's bar down on Holt Road. Been by it, never stopped. Place looks rough. Rough's right. He was leaving. Got it robbed. Got the 20s from the till. Got a fifth of early time stuck neck first down his pants. But he stopped and shot a bottle off the wall. Shot a bottle off the wall. Why'd he do that? Because he is or was a stupid shit. I don't know why he did it. Just to do what he'd seen done on TV, probably. So he could tell the story, I guess, and laugh. But when he just had to stop and shoot that bottle, he took his mind off what he was about, and the clerk, old guy, pulled out a 9 and jacked 3 rounds into his chest, blasted his ass, his already dead ass, I'll point out, half through the plate glass window, onto the walk beside the little put-a-quarter-in-it blue rocking horse. And that's what you deserve when you get fancy, because the clerk had spent a lifetime dreaming of a chance to make his sorry life into a hero's story. It's fancy always fucks you in the ass. Thanks. I'll remember that the next time I'm lonely. That's not funny. I thought it was funny. It's not. No more faux finishes for you, you're saying. They pay for fancy. It's their damn fancy. And I'll buy my own bourbon with their cash. Most interesting thing old Bucky ever did, I bet. Almost robbing a liquor store. Too bad we'll never hear him tell the story. Bucky's a dope. He wouldn't tell it good even if he was still alive to tell it. So that's those guys that I'm thinking about. And this is a poem. Again, this was floating around in my notes, and I decided to turn it into a little bit of a, I'd been for kind of years anyway wanting to write a poem that was kind of a very different version of Auden's Miss G. I don't know if you remember that poem. You can easily find it online. And this one's simply called, I Saw My Shadow Walking. I saw my shadow walking south on Broadhurst Street at dawn. He had a long gun in his hand, a Winchester, 1901. He slung it to his shoulder, waved, and grinned as I drove by. He walked down to the children's park and sat down on the slide. I called the cops to come arrest him. He'd slipped his medication and stolen from beneath our bed my Winchester, 1901. They ordered him to drop the gun. My shadow answered, please? Again they shouted, drop it, punk, hit the ground and freeze. This time my shadow yelled, hell no, and squinted at the sun as he swung up and aimed at them, the Winchester, 1901. Grace Pittman opened her front door and bent to fetch the news when she heard 2 pistol shots resound, as she said in interviews. I looked and saw Hudgins' shadow flop like a bag of air. Grace Pittman told reporters, who didn't really care. That shadow, it was mentally ill, though I guess that point is moot. When you're that sick, you're really sick. He forced the cops to shoot. After the slide and swings were scrubbed and shadowless in sun, I walked to the courthouse and claimed my Winchester, 1901. And now, are we at, no, we are not, yes, we are at the 3-poem warning. And this is where we go into our hurry-up offense or our slack defense. This one just simply called "There's No Such Thing as Spare Change." That's actually the punch. This is completely irrelevant, but do you remember there was a black comedian named George Wallace, big guy, and it was always alarming to see a black comedian named George Wallace. And he had a bit that I remembered from where people would come up to him and say, "Spare change, spare change," and he'd go, "There's no such thing as spare change." Apparently, I'm the only one who thought that's funny. That's because you people are, nice. Just for that, you're not going to get the Sam Kinniston imitation. There's no. You don't like Sam Kinniston? This. I courted my wife with this. She had never heard of Sam Kinniston, and I courted her with this story, which is that Kinniston, who was coked out of his gourd. I ended up reading. Just a couple of weeks ago read his brother's memoir about him. But Kinniston would come out, and he was just. You could see he was buzzed out of his mind. He had hair that looked greasy and long. He had a big coat that hung down, and he looked like a derelict. And he would come out, and he would, now imagine I am screaming at the top of my lungs. And you know this, don't you? And he'd go, "You can't scare me. I've been married." You knew that bit, didn't you? So anyway, so all of that has zero to do with this poem. There's no such thing as spare change. That probably needs to change. Spare change, spare change, spare change, he chanted, so wrote I didn't bother saying no like everyone before me. I was no different. So why did he step out, block my path, and offer a matted, damp, dark thing, a hatchling, half held, half nestled in his beard? Feed it from an eyedropper till it died, walk around the corner and discard it? No, thank you, I heard myself say, pushing past. Dark gardens. From my neighbor's garden after dark, I harvested asparagus, pilfering slender spears from their feathery bed. I cut buds of American beauty, and all spring and through the summer, I have savored the fragrance redolent of theft. Through summer, I pinched from his vines squash, beans, tomatoes, and more squash. In the yard where I watched his daughter marry, I have, by moonlight, quietly divided his hostas, divided his daylilies, keeping half. My neighbor's dead, the house for sale, and his dark garden's mine to love and plunder. The last one is, I guess, an elegy from my Aunt Bess, Aunt Annie Bess. I know this is not going to sound like praise, was the kindest of my relatives. And she was a florist, and at the funeral in Griffin, Georgia, in March or April, Aaron? March. My brothers were the pallbearers. This is actually, I hadn't been a pallbearer for 20 years or so, and I was thinking, the last time I did it, it was really light, and this time I almost went to my knees, and I was sitting there thinking, God, I know I'm 20 or 30 years older, but I don't think I'm that weak. And somebody explained to me they have to have these lead containment things in them now. And but anyway, she was a florist, and the shop where she worked had sent ferns to be put around the casket, and they were utterly beautiful, perfect ferns. And the only thing I need to tell you, I got a couple of pieces of botany in here, but the only thing that you might need reminding of is that the soruses are those little things on the underside of the fern leaf, and they've always fascinated me because it always looks like they should touch, and they never do. Just called it Bess. Ferns, gracefully placed, curved over the open casket, and in the sturdy, sweeping breeze of air conditioning, the fronds swayed, waved, and beckoned, and my hands moved, or seemed to, or I willed it so. Silver hair, silver dress, silver face, silver coffin. From the florist's where she worked, perfect ferns, not a bent frond or broken rachis, not a single brown-tipped penna. Close, though, I saw one leaflet had fallen glossy green on her silver hands. On it, a double row of spores, brown-black, near circles, perfectly spaced. No sorus touching another.